Welcome to Finlos Lives. The days are getting shorter again, finally, but the seasons haven't really offered much time for transitions, especially not in the time of careening climate change. One morning, you wake up and it's the solstice, and it's hot, and everything is parched, and as you go to sleep that night and the year begins to wane, the rain starts. And it doesn't seem to stop until winter comes. Weeks in, and the soil is waterlogged. The trees start to tip under the weight of their limbs amid their loosened roots. When the sun shines, it only causes steam to rise from the asphalt. Your clothes stick to your sweaty skin as soon as you open the door. Transitions are essential. Transitions are frightening. They are the liminal spaces between before and after, when we have the time to process and prepare for the unknown. The consequences of age accompanied the summer rain. I received word that my father, 76, would be undergoing open heart surgery, a triple that would become a quadruple bypass. Plans were changed so that I would be able to return from a work trip that I was on with family, and I found myself driving to see my dad in the hospital in the ICU. The 5 hours of mostly silence were a gift where I could draw out my feelings and examine them and their relationship to the situation. When my mother was diagnosed with cancer, she kept me at arm's length from her illness, wanting to protect me. I was also half my present age and not emotionally equipped to engage fully with the process of her rapid health decline and eventual death 6 months later. With my father in surgery and his future unclear, I wanted to be sure to be present for him and for myself, no matter the outcome of his procedure. The surgery was successful, and we were able to share a moment of mutual relief, hold hands, and give security and comfort, as he did for me in my own health crisis just a couple of years ago. Even if he doesn't remember that I was there for him when he first woke up, in that moment he gripped my hand firmly, rubbed his finger against mine, and it was enough. Now, though, I have entered a new liminal space. When he was discharged from the hospital, he came to our home for the first week of intensive care so that he could be nearer the hospital should an emergency arrive. This was not to be his time, but it did mark a new phase of his life that would require a level of dependence that he is not and has never been accustomed to. But he allowed Eva and I to care for him, to make him feel safe and welcome, to provide assurance. That week became a time to cherish his presence and his life, and while nothing can alleviate the pain of loss, I feel that time allowed me the opportunity to be right with him and with myself, so that when the time does come, I can simply be present and hold his hand. I know that in those moments of waiting, transition, uncertainty, I have often let myself fall into the patterns of anxiety and distress and wasting the opportunities for reflection, growth, and appreciation. But the liminal spaces, the times between, are precious. As I consider the choices that I have to make in my life, when choices themselves seem so few, the moments of pause give time to consider, not to be confused with delay or indecision or any other name for procrastination. And not only can I consider the potential outcomes of the choices I make, but also to appreciate the experiences I've gained and how I can learn from them and use that to make the choices good ones. But of course, to think of time as liminal is figurative. The term itself comes from the Latin word limen, which means threshold, that area at the bottom of a doorway that you must cross to enter or exit a space. As such, thresholds, and liminal spaces too, require action to both enter and exit. Of course, we are entering and leaving liminal moments constantly in both time and space. Moments and places of transition that offer even the briefest repose, if we will take it. Relationships, work, living arrangements, lives, all constantly shifting despite the hardest struggle to maintain a sense of permanence. when we enter a train station, an airline terminal, a hospital waiting room, when we submit a job application or wait for the sun to rise, when we wait for our pregnancy test results or we close our eyes to fall asleep. These are the moments to pause and take a breath. And now from liminal spaces to deep space. This week, NASA released the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope, and thank goodness for a little perspective to remind us all of the scale of things, both big and small, for whatever those descriptors are worth. Rarely does the release of 5 images hold such rapt attention for people from around the world, so much so that even President Biden had to get involved in their releasing the first image as a tease for the whole set. When they were finally released on Tuesday, there were near universal gasps for anyone who took a moment to pause and view the splendor of the images. 20 years of construction, $11 billion invested, 6 months to warm up and calibrate, and finally, it was proven to all have been worth it. In the images are shown the layers of expelled gas in NGC 3132, the Southern Nebula Ring, the stellar nursery of NGC 3324 in the Carina Nebula, the interactions between 5 galaxies in Stephan's quintet, and the galaxy cluster SMACS 0723 as it appeared 4.6 billion years ago. It is that last description that is at the heart of the Webb Telescope's mission, as it features a massive infrared telescope that is able to capture light that is just reaching us from the earliest stages of the universe's formation that have yet been able to be captured. The other image released was perhaps a little less glamorous, but just as exciting, as it shows the Webb Telescope's ability to use light to measure the atmospheric characteristics of exoplanet WASP 96b, a gas giant some 1,150 light-years from Earth. Included in the analysis was the chemical signature for water. The James Webb Telescope is intended to be the premier orbital observational tool for the next decade. For this week's What We've Been Watching, I'm going to do a little time traveling back to January of this year. That's 2022 for anyone who's keeping track. That's when Netflix surprise released a new horror found film hybrid genre series called Archive 81, based on the podcast of the same name. It played right into all of our interests: endearing nerds, seances, haunted hotels, clean aesthetics, cultists, analog to digital conversions, time travel, and a mythology that both paid homage to its many forebears while not being afraid to experiment a little with how it unfolded. Yes, that's a lot for a show to try to pack into just 8 episodes. And to be honest, the series was mostly successful at catching interest and raising tension throughout the entire single-season run. The show focuses on its 2 leads, the characters Dan Turner, played by Mamadou Athie, and Melody Pendris, played by Dina Shahabi. Both actors inhabit their roles very well. Dan is a fully believable media restoration artist. Some of my favorite sequences of the entire show were long, elegant crosscuts of him freeing melted tape spools, gently cleaning them with cotton swatches and alcohol, and respooling them into new cassettes. Athie's cool intensity and presence in his scenes made him extremely relatable, especially in the moments of heightened tension. He was also able to effectively convey a wide range of emotions from boredom, to surprise, to fear, to genuine care throughout the course of the narrative. Shahabi's Melody Pendris was similarly relatable, as her motivations unwound throughout her story. In the beginning, it was hard to pin down exactly how to feel for her as she harassed her new neighbors in the Visser apartment building with her camcorder. But as she met the various tenants and her motives became more clear and complex, her character became much more interesting and sympathetic. If there is a weakness to the characters, it's that they lean very heavily on trauma tropes to explain their eccentricities. Dan's family having died in a house fire under mysterious circumstances and a breakdown later in his life, Melody's abandonment by her mother in a convent. Both of these details become significant to the plot and are acceptable wrinkles to the story, but they aren't the most original ideas. Thankfully, the relationships that they both have to the other characters in the stories, especially each of their best friends, and then the fairly well-developed residents of the Visser Hotel. There is a misstep that is hard to overlook, though, and that is that the show's creators decided to put a face on God. That is, the antagonistic force that is driving the entire plot eventually shows up in the climax of the season. I don't want to give too much away, so I won't give any specific descriptions or details, but this god or force called Kalego is named throughout the series and is a potent enough entity as an idea and as a presence which is successfully represented by a humanoid idol or statue in various episodes. I am a strong believer that it is a very difficult thing to make evil believable as a physical presence in a show or movie, especially when that evil is portrayed as godlike and able to alter space and time. Whatever you create can never match what my mind can imagine, and more often, the evil perpetrated by humans in this story do the work of the evil in a much more believable and frightening way. In series that deal with demons and deities and monsters of the week, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or shows of that kind, it's okay to have people in suits or special effects to inhabit those evil forces. But in this show, the mood, with its extremely effective use of analog distortion, a creepy soundtrack with equally creepy leitmotif, and convincingly disturbed humans, when the big bad is finally revealed, it could only ever be a disappointment. And yet I still love the show. Of course, Netflix canceled it after its first season, despite being in the platform's top 10 for a bit after launch, and consistently positive reviews. Despite the single season that ends on a cliffhanger and my single gripe, I still recommend it. I have watched the entire season several times and continue to enjoy it, and if you really like the characters, you could always listen to the whole podcast, which is still available for free at archive81.com. That's it for this episode. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions, please send them to finloslives@gmail.com or share them on social media. You can also leave me a voicemail via the SpeakPipe widget at finloslives.com. Thanks for listening, and stay safe.